Today we are going to talk about the giants, the ancient giants who ruled America, the missing skeletons, and the Great Smithsonian cover-up. We have with us the author, Richard Dewhurst. What led you to this yourself? What sparked your interest in this?
Well, the short answer is that I'm tall. I'm 6'6", and I've had a lifelong interest in giant stories. And I'm also a documentary filmmaker and a journalist. So over the years, I collected a sort of Fortean file with references to giants being found around America. And most of them were very short nubs or reference things. And so to get to the bottom of it, I subscribed to a couple of newspaper archive services that covered 300 or 400 years of newspaper reports in the United States. And that's when I really started to crack the thing. Abraham Lincoln was giving a speech in Niagara Falls in 1848 in which he said, "The eyes of that extinct species of giant, whose bones fill the mounds of America, have gazed on Niagara as ours do now." And that quote is amazing for a number of reasons. First of all, that Abraham Lincoln said it. Number two, that it shows how widespread the knowledge of the giants in the 19th century were. We were an agrarian society. People were plowing fields all over America and turning up giant bones everywhere. The other interesting point is that an ancient town of giants was found on the Canadian-U.S. border near Niagara Falls with several hundred giants, houses with chimneys. They even found a blacksmith shop with 2 tons of charcoal and evidence of gold and silver work. And then close to there in Cayuga, New York, they found what was called the Cemetery of Giants. That was 200 skeletons, 7 to 9 feet tall. A little farther down the state on the Pennsylvania line, they found 150 skeletons, 7 feet tall. And this continues all the way down the coast of America and all the way across the middle of America and out to Catalina Island in California, which is one of the most astonishing stories you'll ever hear, what they found out there.
And how would you describe the real history of America, North America, as opposed to the Smithsonian official view that we've been fed for such a long time?
Well, let's get to the nub of it. The Smithsonian, when they started out, they published their first book in 1848 on the ancient monuments of the Mississippi Valley. It was an incredibly open-minded study with beautiful drawings of all of the mound builder finds that they had made in the middle of the country. Now, we're not talking about American Indians here. We're talking about what they refer to as the mound builder culture. And that predates the Indians, and it reached its height probably around 1200 A.D. But we're now getting dates all the way back to 10,000 B.C. And this mound builder culture is pervasive. The Smithsonian report itself said there's several 100,000 mounds in the United States. Now, in 1879, Major John Wesley Powell, who was a famous Western explorer, was made the first head of the Bureau of Ethnology. In 1879, he issued what was called the Powell Doctrine. And the Powell Doctrine forbade any evidence of pre-Columbus contact in the Americas. He said we're dealing with aboriginal savages who are illiterate. There's no signs of higher intelligence. Basically, it was carte blanche for manifest destiny, and also one of the cornerstones of the Smithsonian was the theory of evolution. And the theory of evolution, in a nutshell, says that we keep getting bigger and smarter over time. And you can't very well have 7 to 12 foot giants everywhere in America and argue that we're getting bigger and smarter. So,
Nope.
That pretty much, and they've never rescinded the Powell Doctrine. So in case after case after case, these skeletons are being sent to the Smithsonian and just disappearing.
Who actually discovered America, or has it always been inhabited, do you think?
Well, it's very curious. Some of the finds, including the Spirit Cave mummies, which were found out in Nevada, they were discovered in the 1940s by the University of Nevada under several feet of bat guano. And they were incredibly well preserved, red hair, still intact, and covered in an incredibly finely woven fabric made out of tule reed, which is like papyrus. These things were dated at the time to be 1,000 years old and promptly filed away. And several years ago, a University of California researcher heard about them. He got one of them, carbon dated it to 7,500 BC.
Huh.
We're talking about advanced weaving and mummification in the Americas at 7,500 BC. So at one point, I say, well, maybe we discovered them and they didn't discover us.
Exactly, yeah.
But the related finds, especially in the Newark earthworks and up in Iowa along the Mississippi River, there's evidence of hieroglyphs, Egyptian writing, Roman coins. There's Hebrew holy stones that they found. The list just goes on and on. Viking, Celtic, Scythian, Asian, Hindu. I think everyone knew we were here, except kids that go to school in America these days.
The copper mines, which seems to have pretty established that there might have been trade routes going back to,
Absolutely.
I don't know, 2,000 years, right?
Well, the copper mines in Keweenaw Peninsula in northern Michigan are some of the most interesting, fascinating things I ran across in the book. Right north of the tip of the peninsula is something called Isle Royale, which is an island that's virtually made out of copper. And it's the highest quality, purest copper in the world because of the volcanic upthrust. The copper was all exposed to the air and the sulfur impurities burned off. Now, they've got evidence of mining there that go back 10,000 years. And there was two professors from Michigan who published a book that estimated 1.5 billion tons of copper were taken out of there.
Huh.
Now, the kings and queens, the giants in the mounds that I go through in the book are almost always covered in copper jewelry, copper crowns, copper armor, micas, often in association with that. But that in no way accounts for the extraordinary amount of copper that was taken out of there. And there's indications, there's some rock art I saw that looked like a boat from Crete had been engraved. And there's stories of monolithic docks up there, quays, dams, all kinds of things. So there's, and also I even ran across, they won't test the European copper for the Michigan signature, but I did see a passing reference to Oxford University tested one piece and found out it was from Michigan. So.
Really? How would they go about doing that? It's just so distinctly different, right? So you can see it?
Its purity is over 99%.
Right. So who do you think was responsible for the mines, for the mining?
Well, again, there's huge finds of giants up there. I mean, basically what we're talking about is not that America was populated exclusively with giants, but that the ruling class was composed of giants. And mound after mound after mound, the central burial is of a giant. Sometimes he's surrounded in a semicircle burial with 10 warriors with their feet pointing at him. I have a great series of reports out of Tennessee and Kentucky that were done by Dr. John Haywood in 1823, where he went over 100 years of the stuff they had been finding there, and they found 9-foot blonde-haired giants in secret caves with roll-away stones, sacred springs, standing burials with monoliths around them. Just extraordinary stuff. And very specific, in terms of, here's where it was located. It was on this road. It was found by this guy. It was witnessed by these scientists. It was taken to the town over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems to be, I've wondered about this as well, if the stature of the people has to do something with the land and with the geology or something like that as well, because it seems like you talk about the Lenape, the Delaware Indians, for example, and they were also very tall, right?
Yes, and their legends go very far back and tie into the high culture that existed out in the deserts in the western part of the United States that basically came to an end around 5000 BC as a result of the Lassen volcano explosion. And as I said, we had very advanced mummification weaving found out they're dated, carbon-14 dated, 7,500 BC. The Lenape legends say that they were forced to migrate east. And when they crossed the Mississippi Valley, they ran into the ruling race of giants there, which were the Allegheny or Alaguay Indians. And that it was a series of epic battles that were joined in by another group that were called the Menengwe, who apparently also were giants. And the Alaguay were defeated and driven south, and the Lenape made it all the way across the country and are found all over the New York, Delaware, Pennsylvania area up until the time of the settlers. So the Indians, over and over again also, I got to add, they always say, we didn't build these mounds, we didn't clear these fields, we didn't do any of this.
Yeah.
Giants did, you know. And the height of their culture existed for thousands of years and seemed to have gone into a collapse between 1200 and 1500 AD. I have some remnant stories out west of what were called the Sitaka, or the red-haired giants. And the Paiute Indians tell a story that they drove the last of them into Lovelock Cave and set a huge fire and burned them out. It's curious that in my research I found out that they did excavations in Lovelock Cave, and under bat guano, once again, they found evidence of a fire, and under that they found 6 giant skeletons with red hair. Huh. We must take a lot of these Indian myths and legends a lot more seriously.
Indeed. I definitely agree with that. I think you do have a cross, you could correlate these stories with things that was going on in Europe as well. We have the myth of Beowulf and the Jotuns up in the north. It's worldwide, right?
I agree more.
Yeah.
I think what we're looking at is, I'd hate to call it the Atlantean culture, but I think that there was a worldwide culture that was ruled by giants. All the stories of the Titans, Goliath, so on and so forth. There's a very interesting story, quote I have in the Bible from Numbers, where they talk about going into a strange land ruled by the sons of Anak, who come from the giants. And it says, standing before them, we looked like grasshoppers. And if you look at the sons of Anak as a name, you notice that it's very similar to the Anunnaki,
right?
Which are from Sumerian legend. It's also very similar to the Anasazi, who are the cliff dwellers out west, and the name that they used for the ancient ones that were the copper miners in Michigan.
Fascinating. Now, let's see if we can talk about if you believe that there were different people, cultures, races, whatever you want to call it, in different regions then, because there is certain areas where there definitely is more activity, more finds, if you will. I mean, Ohio, definitely that seems to be the prime one, right? Almost.
Amazing finds all throughout Ohio, involving universities, Smithsonian. Well, if you take a look at it, I mean, the problem with America is that we think of it in terms of states, and so we have blinders on,
Right.
I mean, something can be in Indiana, and it's only 20 miles away from Ohio, but we think it's somehow different. And when you really look at a map of America, you'll see that all the way from West Virginia and Pennsylvania, there's basically a swath of valleys and forests and rivers that continue all the way to the Mississippi River. And these were covered in huge earthworks, hundreds of thousands of them. One Smithsonian report says that they thought in the East Coast alone there was over 100,000 mounds. And some of them, like Cahokia, are larger in mass than the Great Pyramid. But the majority, 80-90% of all these sites have been destroyed over the years. And the government has not protected hardly any of them. So very recently, some of them, Cahokia didn't get a heritage status until the 1960s. And I have articles from 1905 when they were trying to save these things.
Oh boy. Now, I know that there's some interesting things you bring up later in the book. I want to get there in terms of some of the, more or less lost cities and things that we've, largely forgot about. But if we look at what's left already, then we have, the Serpent's Mounds in Ohio. We have around the Mississippi Valley, tons of different earthworks and everything else. What do you think was the purpose of of these sites.